to the November 20th, 2020 Club Cubase Google Hangout. My name is Greg Undo. I'll be the host for the Hangout today. I'm going to do a quick audio test, make sure everything is kind of working as expected before I get started. Okay, so it sounds like everything's coming through okay. And I see that before we even start, we have a thumbs down. So don't know what I did to warrant that, but we'll get it figured out. All right, so hopefully we'll put on a good show for everyone. So as I mentioned, my name is Greg Undo. I work as a product specialist in the United States for Yamaha Corporation of America, where I pretty much primarily focus on Steinberg products. I'll be the host for the Hangout today. I'm going to be broadcasting and presenting from the United States, just outside of Washington, D.C. in Alexandria, Virginia. If you have not attended a Hangout before, how this works is you could ask questions in the live comments field, in the live chat field, or you can submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. So we'll try to be going through those live. If you are watching this on the replay, you may want to skip ahead a few minutes, maybe till maybe 8 or 9 minutes, and we will let people get logged in and get their questions asked in the chat field for those attending live. We will try to have an index up either late tonight or early tomorrow of all the topics that are covered in the Hangout. So we will try to get that so you could quickly reference between different sections to find a particular question. So as if you're attending live, you could go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from. Tell us who you are, and also if this is your first Hangout, let us know as well. So we want to welcome all new Hangout attendees. So that's always great to see new people attending. So in the future, you could always send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. So let's go ahead and take a quick look as to who is on. Okay, so we see Jay from New Haven, Connecticut. Good to see you on. Okay, so we see Vinny Sabatino from Orlando. All right. Okay, so we see Sub 403 from British Columbia. Okay, you see Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Texas. Good to see Robbie, longtime attendee. Okay, so we see Jazz Dude, who's always very helpful from Heidelberg, Germany, I believe. Okay, Ambient Dave is back. Welcome back, Ambient Dave. We've missed you on the Hangouts. Great to see you back. Okay, so we have Stefan from Sweden. All right, good to see Taylor Sapp from Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. Always makes me feel warm and fuzzy seeing someone from Pine Grove because I have family that grew up in the next town or 2 towns over from there. Okay, so we have Pete from Amsterdam. All right, so we have Jeff Zabelski from Chico, California. We have Sir N68 from Sweden. All right, we have Wales. All right, so we have Honolulu. I got to go to Honolulu for a business trip maybe about 10 years ago. So did a presentation at Easy Music in Honolulu. So, all right, so we see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. All right, so we have Portugal. We have Hannah from LA. You have Teaneck, New Jersey. Okay, so we have Australia. So I think we have so far 4 continents. Do we have anyone from... all right, so we have Colombia. So we have South America. So we have Paris. Glad to hear that Ambient Dave's feeling better. All right, and probably like many of you, I have family at home during our COVID era. So you may hear my wife working above me. All right, so we have Tanzania. Good to see Moses from Tanzania. So I may have a couple of interruptions. I'll try to keep those as minimal as possible, but we'll try to go for about 4 hours today. All right, so we have Ted from Sherman Oaks. All right, get started in just a couple more minutes, let more people getting logged in. All right, so we have Toronto. All right, Chile. Okay, so we'll get started here in just a couple minutes, letting more people get logged in. All right, so we have Dave from UK. All right, so we have Pablo's on the Hangout from Galicia, España. Good to see you back. Okay, we'll get maybe another minute or so and we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so we have someone from Hamburg, Germany, where Steinberg is based. All right, so Dave from UK. All right, so we see John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Good to see you back, John. All right, another minute or so, we'll get started. Thanks for everyone's patience. All right, so I think we have 5 continents present for the Hangout so far. So, all right, we have Benny from Tel Aviv. Right, so just wait. Let's go ahead and get started. So we have a lot of people logged in. So let's go ahead and just gonna switch to my kind of different chat area. Okay, so first question. Hi, Greg J from Connecticut. I hope you and your family are well. So 3 quick queries. I believe the chat field jumped, causing to miss on Tuesday. Could you please cover Score Editor's new lyric feature? So I'm not sure if in 11 that there is a new lyrics feature per se in 11. So some of the new scoring features will be more for and will be more based on like the new fonts as well as kind of the new properties tab. But I don't think that there's actually anything that's kind of new with lyrics. Let me just open up a project that might have some lyrics. I could show you some lyric functionality that's probably already in that people sometimes may not know about. me find just find a particular project here quickly. So, but I don't think in Cubase 11, I don't know of any lyric specific scoring functions that were introduced. But if we wanted to just kind of take lyrics and put them in, I'll just show you how to do that real quick as soon as project opens up. Okay, so let's say if I wanted to look at this kind of in lyrics. So, to put lyrics in, one of the cool things is you just go to the other tab and you could just kind of enter lyrics in here and just hit the tab key, and that could take you to the next note. Just kind of that easily, just once you have the lyrics. And as you move the particular note, the tab key will, automatically update as well. So as soon as we, if I come here and just kind of visually move the note, I could just say, so now, when I come, we could just say, okay, I just wanted to, take the particular note and kind of, move it around. At this point, you could have that, but there's really no new lyric functionality inside of Cubase. And if you wanted to, one of the things that you could do is if you have just a text file with the lyrics. So let's say if I have the lyrics in, like a lot of times what I like to do, I'll just delete some of my lyrics that I have here. So let's say in my project folder, if I come directly here, I could just say, within the project, we're going to have our text. We could have kind of, our text that could be set for within the notepad. So here I have lyrics, and what I could do is just copy lyrics, and this is just from the project notepad. And as I want to, we'll close this. We could go to scores, and I think it's under functions, or maybe let me just. Maybe under line elements. No, it's not there. Let me just. But you could just say lyrics from clipboard. And at that point, you could just kind of paste the lyrics directly from the clipboard into the project. So let's say I think this was the chorus. So I will open up the notepad again. And at this point, so go to the project menu to notepad. So I always like to have the lyrics in the notepad here. So as I want to come over here, I could just kind of select that first note. And again, you say lyrics from clipboard. And at this point, you could just kind of put your lyrics in and just kind of have that automatically, and you could move chords underneath if you wanted to. But so, that's so that's kind of easy ways of being able to do it. But there's no really specific new lyric functionality that I'm aware of. Okay. So question 2, could you please show how to copy menu track color settings files? I want to switch systems without repeating steps. So colors are going to be kind of project based. So each project could have its own Colors, most settings you could copy over into Profile Manager for all your preferences, your key commands, user presets. All those different functions could be, translated and copied over in the Profile Manager. But if you wanted to have, if you created your own custom color schemes, you could just, open that up as a project and carry that over in a project. So a lot of people may save it, their custom colors, directly in their template, and then just simply save the template and move that template, and the color scheme will be moved over with the project that's associated with it. Okay. So see a nice comment from Vinny Sabatino. Happy Friday to all. And Greg, thanks for sharing your knowledge with the world. I'm glad to help. Okay. Okay, another, hi Greg, I want to thank you for all the great Hangouts you made. It helped me so much with Cubase and production in general. Greetings from Switzerland. Thank you for the kind words. Okay, so question. Hi, Mr. Greg. Is it possible to do some sort of scale quantizing using Very Audio so that each segment are quantized to a given scale? So currently what you could do is, let's say if I do have the chord tracks kind of visible within this particular project, and I wanted to now jump to Very Audio, you could, so it's not going to be like a scale, when we choose to quantize, we could, select kind of the entire range of notes, and, there's a quantized pitch that we can quantize to kind of move notes, the selected notes like that. But there isn't a quantize to scale within the Very Audio. But one of the things that you could do is actually just change your color scheme. So a lot of times you may just have it based on, automatic colors, or based on the events, or based on the pitch. But if you set it to chord track, you can see, green notes are within the chord, blue notes are within the scale, and red color notes are out of key and out of scale. So, you could see pretty quickly what's going on, visually, color-wise with that. And, if you wanted to move it, you could just know exactly what the notes are. But I think with Very Audio editing, it seems like, we could just take every performance and knock it in key. But sometimes it may be, you may need a little more finesse. Then that could be kind of a broad stroke to use for editing that may not be so applicable. But having the color schemes, I think, makes a little sense, because a lot of times it's not necessarily that it's out of key, but it's out of tune. But you could also, if you don't have a good understanding of the music theory background, that you could just have it automatically, dictate, its sense of position within a chord or the scale based upon the colors. Okay. So a question from, hi Greg, hi Bassheads, happy Friday. Question, can the meters in Supervision be set to different colors per module? And second, how can I be notified about Cubase sales? All right, so let's take a look at the meters. So let's say if I have my track here, and I just want to take my vocal track, and I'll just kind of drop the volume down. And I wanted to put the Supervision plugin, which is a new plugin in version 11, just on this particular track. So you could go to the setup window here, and then you'll see color. So you could say I want it to be set to scale, or if the track is kind of orange, we could have that set. So let's say if I wanted to go to my spectrum curve, so if I select that particular window, so some of them will have some of the different colors. So let's say if I wanted to come and let's do this as like a phase scope. Okay, so it's a mono track, so it won't make much sense. But let's say I want to go to a spectrogram. So once I select this, you could also kind of have it be the track color or be dark. If you wanted to have heat, where you can kind of see more intensity where the main frequencies are. And let's come over here and just insert a different meter. So let's say the spectrum bar. I'll select that and let's go. And let's say if I wanted to switch this to say I'll make this a spectrum intensity. So I think some of these will have so say I'll just go to a chromogram here, select. So some of the different meters will have different coloring options. Some of them can be, so just kind of go to your different setting and, go to the settings for each one, and you could choose it to be, track or scale. So, not all of them will have the choice, but it's kind of intended to be kind of track colors. And if it's not set to a particular color, it'll kind of default to blue. So it could depend on each of the different meters, but you can kind of tweak it a little bit. So a question from Michael Michaels. Hi, Greg. Hope you and your family are well. We're doing great. Thank you for asking. Is there any benefit to installing VST2 versions of a plugin if a VST3 version is available? So generally not. It's maybe only for perhaps, project compatibility, if the plugin doesn't automatically, if it was originally done in a VST2 version, and then, if you only had the VST3, sometimes they may change the name slightly of the plugin. But if you have the choice, always go with the VST3s. That's going to be kind of a more robust infrastructure to work with, and, a bit more contemporary for operating systems and side chaining and more flexibility. So. Okay. Okay, so just see comment from Jeff Zavelski. Hi, Greg. Thanks for help last week. 15 live jazz tracks and cycle markers. Easy. Now, best way to begin a new project with them in Wavelab Pro. Which project-wise? More confusing. Folder file-wise. So if I had a... if I've done my mix down, I would, and you wanted to now take it into Wavelab Pro, what I would do is probably put those, and if it's going to be probably for, let's see if I have just kind of a, let's say if I wanted to do a new, I would put it into a montage. So I would say, okay, we're going to do a new audio montage. Let's create, and I will insert audio files, and I'll just go to my browser. Let's see if I... Okay, so let's say I have, this is maybe a live recording, so I'll just hold down my shift key, and let's say, okay, we have 6 songs, and I would come right over here. It'll ask you, do you want to line them up onto the current track? I know a lot of people when doing mastering may alternate tracks, but I find it quite easy just to see all of my songs kind of laid out for me directly, just like this. And by default, it may just put a 2-second gap between them, but you could, just select, one of them and just kind of, have it automatically snap directly to the end. So if it's a live thing that you wanted to do, you could just get everything kind of lined up, directly here. So this was like, intentionally kind of set up just to segue between different tracks. So you could kind of just listen to that. So if I wanted to move that right into the next song, and then, if you're, burning it to CD or to DDP at this point, you could go to, your CD tab, and there'll be some different options here. So you could just say, I wanted to go to my CD wizard, and then you could just hit apply, and that will kind of automatically put the different markers, the CD track markers for all of those tracks. You could come over here and, add your different metadata if you want to put CD text in. So, and then you could just burn kind of directly from there a CD or a DDP image. So that's kind of how I would take my 15 tracks I've exported from Cubase, and if you wanted to kind of deliver it as kind of a multi-song project. So hopefully that helps. Okay. All right. Once again, great to see Ambient Dave back on the Hangout. We've missed you. All right. So we have Jan from Stockholm with who's done the CubaseIndex.com website where you could search for questions in the Hangouts. So question, do Media Bay previews in the Cubase 11 follow the chord tracks? And no, it's not really intended for that. So if you're doing different, because it doesn't know exactly what position the chord. So if, let's say if we have a chord track with all these changes here, it doesn't know exactly what chord you want it to be because it's not in the timeline to recognize what the chord is. But, if you're doing, different loops, as you, come over here, you could, just do your previews, and that will be kind of independent. If it's going to be MIDI loops, I think we have a bunch of MIDI loops here in SQL where it could actually kind of load up, the keyboard as well. So let's say, okay, I just want it to come here to, different electric piano loops. So this will actually kind of load this up and play back a sequence. And when you drag these into the project window, if that track is set to follow the chord tracks, then it will comply and follow. But in the preview in the Media Bay, it doesn't know which chord to actually kind of preview through. So that's kind of why it doesn't do that. Okay, so question, can we export Q in C11 be set to, okay, can the export Q in C11 be set to send tracks to multiple destination paths? So yeah. So let's say if I have, if I have this track going to, let's say if I add this, add a group channel to the selected channel, and let's say if I'm doing maybe like a parallel path, so if I add another group channel to the selected channel, so we'll say, okay, I want to be, and as we go to our export cues, we could come right over here. So we go to our export audio mixdown. You could choose to have all of your group channels. So these are the two that I just created. So once you click on multiple, you could choose, that one file, through all of its routing could be handled directly here. So if you have that going to different groups and you have your groups selected, at that point you could, say, okay, my vocal is going to 3 of these groups and 2 effect sends and the master output and its own track, and it could be kind of exported into all the different paths where it's going in the mixer itself. Okay, so question I'm having a new computer built. Congratulations, Taylor. I upgraded to Cubase 11. Can I install full version on new computer, or do I need to install 10.5 first? So you could just install Cubase 11. You don't need to build upon it. So, there's going to be, like, when you go to the Steinberg download manager, you're going to have kind of the option to, you could do the full install. And, now when you do it, everything's kind of broken down, because we had a lot of people that didn't want to do like a 20 gigabyte download, if they lived in an area that had slow internet speed. So they kind of broke it down into different components for the downloads and installs. So you could do that quite easily, but you don't have to install the previous version. Just kind of, when you go to the Cubase 11, you could just install everything from scratch, and that'll probably be a better result and a little clearer, but you don't have to install the previous versions. So question, does a higher sample rate and or bit rate make a difference in time stretch artifacts? So a lot of times having a higher sample rate can do this. We released an audio interface, the AXR4T, which is a Thunderbolt, and an AXR4U, which is a USB interface, and they're actually 32-bit 384K. And people are like, why would you release, a 384K converter? And so when you do kind of extreme pitch shifting, so when people are doing sound design work specifically, where they, often take something and they want to stretch it down 8 octaves, if there's more information to kind of deal with, for the stretching to interpolate, and if it's starting from more data initially, then a lower bit depth or sample rate, then that can make a difference. So I think that the algorithms in Cubase work really well, kind of within normal kind of reasons. If you take a song that is recorded at 100 beats a minute and drop it down to 10 beats a minute, you will probably hear artifacts. But if you have more data for it to work with, it often gives kind of better results for like extreme time stretching and pitch shifting. Okay. Okay, so it says, hi, Greg. Soren in Sweden. I made video questions in email instead of text. Maybe I did wrong, but it was easier to do. I can redo if you skip the video question. So I think if you sent like the YouTube link, that the YouTube link was set to private. So I wasn't able to really kind of take a look at the YouTube link. So if you could, perhaps make it not private, or grant me permission to see the YouTube video, that would be helpful. But thanks for asking. But yeah, I'd love to kind of check out. Okay, so question, has there been any improvement in VST Connect in Cubase 11? So, it's a Cubase, there is kind of a newer, a slightly newer version. So when we go to, let's say, we'll create a VST Connect SE here. So, and as we want to work with it, so there's some new kind of graphic user interface stuff. It's some minor tweaks with, with that, but there is some kind of improvements, especially on like the VST Connect Pro side, because now you have the ability to also stream video. So if you're recording and scoring to video or doing ADR work, that with the VST Connect Pro, you have the option to, work with video, which is something that a lot of people, actors who wanted to be working from, who wanted to record all their, dialogue overdubs in a film, that could work with. So it'll have support for that. But for, the VST Connect SE, probably most of the functionality is the same, but a slightly different user interface. It'll be high DPI and scalable. Okay. All right, so let's see. I see a question from Michael Teams. Hello, Greg. Having trouble with the download assistant. It's in the loop. Is there a direct link for downloading any files? Need support? Help. If you want to send me a quick email, Michael, you could email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. There is a direct link download. But also, I've seen from a lot of people that when they're working with this, if that seem to have problems if their computer's clock was out of time, was set to the incorrect time. So make sure that that you may want to just make sure that your computer clock is set to the correct time. Most of the time you can do like a quick internet time check. So if you do that, that seemed to help a lot of people. But if not, you could email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de and I could send you kind of a direct download link for that. Okay. All right. So we see Teaneck, New Jersey checking in. Okay, so I just see from Eric, and I think this is probably a continuation or discussion from last Hangout or the one before. I did the ping thing in the external effects tab, but there's still a 30 sample offset when I use hardware insert on a parallel track. The delay compensations with external effects isn't perfect. So, I've had to be, really kind of, I wonder if it's, if, maybe if you have a project that you could share with me, that would be helpful. I'd be happy to kind of take a quick look at it as well. All right. So, but there's nothing that kind of is jumping out. I know you could manually offset different things, but also check to see if there is any if you have direct monitoring on or not, and that may also have an effect. Okay, so we see the tuba guy from Switzerland checking in. Thanks. All right, we have Chris from Bryan, Texas. We have Arizona. All right, so we see Sir Robert checking in. All right, so we have Carlos, Sir Robert from Atlanta. All right, so we have Carlos from Colombia. All right. We have Nalima from Paris, France. All right, so just see a comment, loving the new vision aspect and global tracks and the key editors, very helpful. Cheers from Steve in the UK. Glad you're liking it. All right, so we have Ali from Iraq. Good to see you on a Hangout. All right, we have Tampa checking in. And I will, so just kind of reading through some stuff. All right. All right. And my chat field just kind of jumped on me. So sorry about that. All right. Hopefully I haven't lost questions already. Okay. So I think we're okay. All right. Just going through a bunch of introductions. Thanks for everyone checking in. Okay, so see this from Jan. Is it possible to share custom made presets for Steinberg's VST? Thanks. So when you make a preset for an instrument, so let's say if I wanted to come and I will just, let's say I'll make a channel strip. Let's say I'll do a channel strip preset. So I'll come here. Okay, so I'll just come right here, say this is our perfect settings for our channel strip. That should sound lovely with that EQ. So I will save a strip preset. So let's go ahead and we'll call it November 20th channel strip. Okay, so when we go to the media bay, you know, if you wanted to, all of your presets, all your user presets that you have in your system can be exported in a user profile along with other information. But if you wanted just like, you know, presets for channel strip or effects or synthesizers, when we go into kind of the big media bay here, you could see just user content. So we could say, I wanted to go to strip presets here. So here's our November 20th channel strip. So they will all just be in the user presets category. And if you wanted to, you could kind of right click and reveal in Finder, and that will show you exactly where those presets are, or in Explorer. Then you could copy them over and just kind of, you know, place them into you know, the same folder structure. So when we come again, we'll just say, let's reveal in Finder, and it's same, you know, and at this point, just you could mimic the same kind of folder structure that you have. So this goes into, you know, on Mac, your users, to audio, to Steinberg, channel strip presets. So but you could just kind of find that directory path and copy over particular presets if you wanted to. So they're going to show up under the user presets in Media Bay, and find which ones that you want, and then, you know, just right click and copy those files over and kind of put them into the same location on the other computer. All right, so we see a comment from Ambient Dave, really enjoying the new Cubase 11, getting to understand it gradually. That's great. I was there a little while ago too, so. Okay, so just see a comment from Capital Razor. Hello, Greg. Thanks for answering my question on reversing MIDI melodies. I think it was 2 Hangouts ago. You're welcome. So question, is there a way to auto load a template to create a project from when you start the application? So I think if we, let's just say, I'll do a new project here. I think there's something like where you could say save, you know, if you name it default or auto load or something, but I'll just take a quick look. I haven't done this in a long time. Okay, so let's say I will just, okay, let me just see if there's, I thought it was, I know this may have moved and behavior may have changed. Okay, I'll just do a quick search real quick. So I want to say maybe if we choose, if you save it as default.cpr, that may automatically load that. It might be, the behavior might have changed. All right, let me just look for. Yeah, so I'm not sure. I think that might have been in previous versions. I could play around with it. I don't want to necessarily get out, but you could, as soon as you save it as a template, though, and you start up with the hub, and you do a new project, you could just kind of, you know, just start with, your template as the hub. But you could try maybe saving as default.cpr. I think that used to kind of work in previous versions. So. But if you want to email me, I could take a look at it some more. Sorry for hitting the mic. All right. Okay, we see that Pablo is ready to learn. Okay, question. Can you demonstrate how to properly record MIDI drums, keyboard MIDI drums? Okay, so I will just go ahead and add an instrument track. Or I'll just start with one of my projects that is kind of designed for this. Okay, so let's say I just have my MIDI controller here. I'll just open up directly within a drum editor part here. So I'm just going to create kind of a blank one measure nothing. But I will, let's say I just have a drum part here. You could, do a number of different ways. So let's say I just want to do, okay, so I have the correct drum map set up. So if I just put this into, and I'll just do this in the lower zone. Let me adjust one quick preference. Okay, so let's say I just kind of place this and record, and I just want to do like kind of one measure, and I'll just solo this. And let's say I turn on my click. All right, so let's say now I just want to put in and if you wanted to, put in hi-hats. So say, world's worst drum programming because my keyboard position is really awkward. So at this point, we could just, take any of your drums, and if you wanted to quantize that based on, let's say not 16th note triplets. We'll say eighth notes. You know, you can. So anything that you just kind of play in, and it's just using, you know, drums that I've put in. So if I want to do. And then if you wanted to just kind of paint in, you could just say, okay, I want to take this and let's just paint in some 16th notes as well. So I could just So, you know, you could just do, you know, some really basic. And I could just kind of select those particular snares and. So, you know, you could play it in real time via MIDI if you wanted to, you know, or if you just wanted to kind of audition and play. So, you know, anything that's just kind of captured in MIDI, you could just kind of put it into cycle mode if you wanted to do one part at a time. I know people that will, my friend Rob Arbitier is probably like one of the funkiest drummers. And he does everything from just his left hand. And if you watch his left hand, he uses, you know, his pinky, you know, all his fingers in his left hand except for his thumb. And he'll play everything, you know, because he, you know, and he's incredibly realistic because he approaches it that, you know, a drummer has 4 limbs to work with. So he's only going to limit himself to 4 fingers that can strike something at once. But, you know, just kind of, you know, take your different drum parts and record it in, use drum pads. It's pretty easy to do, or you could just kind of draw it in and come up with something if you wanted to. And so, okay, so we see when will Cubase be native for M1 Max? This is going to be kind of like most software companies, it's going to take a while. So, you know, the Steinberg team is working on it, but unfortunately it's a pretty big architecture change for a lot of this stuff with the audio engine. So it may run in kind of, you know, was it the Coco compatibility mode or whatever. So I think we have people already utilizing that, but I think we will see it, you know, it's going to be a pretty significant change like it is for a lot of the companies for it to be kind of fully natively supported. So. Okay, so just see comment from Ambient Dave. Really enjoyed the live chat that I did with Sonic Scoop showing Cubase 11 features. Thanks. It's always a lot of fun working with those guys. Okay. Okay, so just kind of seeing Michael Teams, more comments on the downloads. Okay, so I just see, hello, sir, Cubase Master, out to live, like listening in car or mobile to check master tracks. Okay, so maybe, hello, sir, Cubase Master out to live listen in a car or mobile to check master tracks. So I know, you know, I've seen some people will set up, you know, the old days. I remember in the early 90s. Like, I got to do some stuff at A&M Studios in Hollywood. And at that time they had like, I think it was like an old like 57 Chevy, and they would have like an FM transmitter so you could go listen to it in the car in the parking lot. So I know some people do that. We'll just kind of use an FM transmitter. I'm sure that a lot of you could have, I know some people will take the phone, and a lot of people are now testing on like Amazon Alexa devices, and they'll just kind of take a Bluetooth out, transmit Bluetooth audio. So do the mix down in front of the computer, play, connect the Bluetooth directly to it, and generally Bluetooth is going to add some significant latency. So I would probably take like a mix down file and play it and connect the device to Bluetooth. I haven't, you might be able to just do like a Bluetooth audio out here if it's like on a Mac. But it's not going to be kind of ideal because it's going to impose a lot of latency on the system. So, but if you wanted to listen to it on devices, I know a lot of people will do their mix down and stream it to like, different Amazon Echo devices as kind of a reference, because so many people listen to music on their, Amazon Echo Studios or Echoes. So, but it's really just kind of having your computer transmit the audio, and I would probably do it outside of Cubase, like take a stereo mix down file. I'll experiment over the weekend to see if there's a way on Mac and PC to reliably kind of transmit to Bluetooth, but if it's kind of set to, your audio setup and your studio setup for your device, you may just have to, if you have a Bluetooth ASIO driver for your computer, you might be able to do it straight from there. But I'll do some more research if you want to send me an email at clubcubase@steinberg.de. Okay, so see Gareth on a Hangout. Good to see you. Okay, so just see a comment from Jay. The syllables and tab is perfect. Thank you. That's great. Yeah, and it's been in there probably since Atari days. Okay, reading through different comments. All right. Okay, so please, can you go through how to sync an imported loop with a drum and bass line to grid and tempo? I'm not understanding the 1/4 signature function. How do I set up, say, 4/4? Okay, so let's say if I have, let me just find, I'll just open up a quick project. So say if I have like a 2-track mix, I think that this is where it's kind of going. Excuse me. Okay, so let's say I have like a 2-track mix and no tempo correlation between the two. So I will come here and do, from my project menu, a tempo detection. And a tempo detection is kind of figuring out where the beats fall. And sometimes you may have to do like a quick offbeat correction. All right, so as we've kind of worked with this now, I want to define, it's going to place the meter into 1/4 because it needs to define exactly, because, it's not going to necessarily do an analysis of if you're in 2/4, 5/4, 3/4, 4/4. So I'm going to just define the downbeat of the project. Then I'll just turn my snap on here. So let's say it's going to start off with a little drum fill. All right, so now I've just, in this signature track that's automatically created after doing a tempo detection, I placed a 4/4 right at the downbeat. I'm going to go to, let's say, some of our loops that we have. So let's say I want to do Hard Knocks, and I want it to be... So I'll just go through different beats here. So let's say I want to take this particular drum loop and have that loop follow the timing of that. So now what I need to do is to just take this drum loop and I need to place this into musical mode. So I will just enable musical mode there. So now as I play this, this is going to match the same tempo that we have going on. So if we listen to it. So the tempo of the loop is now matching what is actually playing. So this loop is now speeding up and slowing down. So when you see the 1/4, like in your signature track, all you have to do is just find a downbeat, and just with the scissors tool, it'll just turn into like the pencil tool, just define exactly where the downbeat is, and just define that as, if you're in 3/4, 4/4, 5/4, define that and just change that, and then you'll be kind of all set. And if this wasn't in musical mode, it's going to play back at its original tempo, but I put it into musical mode. Now it's kind of like a tempo parasite. So the reason it goes into 1/4 is because the actual detection is based on quarter notes in the project. So. Okay. All right. So I just see in our comment from Jay, I don't think that I was clear or something, but I was trying to ask Greg if there was a file name for settings that I can move to other systems to update project colors by copying file. So, the colors, I think the only way to really migrate those currently is in an actual project itself. And then those colors will be stored within a project. So just save a project, and then that will be able to carry over. Okay, so we have a question. Hey, Greg, in our question, can I create a chord track from the MIDI clips of multiple instruments at once? And can I create chord pads from existing MIDI clips? Thank you. Much love. All right, so. Okay, so I'll just do a new chord track version here. So. Or I'll just try something that might be quicker. So let me just. All right, so let's say if I have this going on and I'm going to now add a quick instrument track. Let's add a different instrument track here. So I'll just put on. So what I want to do is select all the chords and I'm going to just drag them down. And I'll go to MIDI and let's just choose to go to dissolve part and we'll separate pitches. I'll just all right, so just get this set up. Okay, so let's say if I just want to delete this track. So when I look at all of these parts, kind of select it together, we'll see our chord. Okay, so let's see if I select all these events here and I go to my project to create chord symbols. So it looks like it's going to need it from within one particular part. So it would have to be like chords based on one part is what it looks like. And let's say, can you create chord pads from instruments? So I'll just open up another project here quickly. So it's kind of a two-step process. So if I take the piano part here and I do a make chords, create chord symbols, and this is going to make a chord track. So let's say if I have my chord track here and we have chord pads, what you could do is you could say assign pads from chord track. So I'll just say, okay. And now the chords that were in the project that were derived from, let's say, the piano part have now been applied to the chord pads. So it's kind of a two-step process, but it should get you there. All right, so still, see a question, still trying to understand the major differences between the loop browser and media browser. They are almost indistinguishable. So it could really depend on kind of, they are kind of just subsets of the particular, when you go to Media Bay. So when you go to your loop browser, and let's go ahead and open up Sound Browser. So, you could have these kind of set for different things. So, you could say a lot of people may use the sound browser and you could just say, I want it to be, just for, some people will set this up one for loops and one for like VST instrument presets, but you could configure them to kind of show the same things. But if you quickly wanted to navigate to instrument sounds and one just to loop sounds without having to switch back and forth, that's what you could do. All right, good to see Cap Tenergy music on. Okay, reading through comments, lots of great discussion. So I see this metering looks like a cool feature. So it's probably the Supervision plugin. So it's great. I think a lot of Cubase users will be looking for an extra monitor for Black Friday. Okay, so I just see from Nick, hi, I was hoping that with the new multi-bounce function to have a job in queue that I can select certain tracks and groups in the export window and have them to be combined to be a stereo mix. Is this in the works? So I think what we're seeing with the initial, if you're not familiar in Cubase 11 is, we could have, when we go to our audio mix down, we could have job queues. So we could have different configurations, different formats to deliver. So if I want to say, create an MP3 file, create a 1644.1 wave, create a 2448K interlead, create different configurations here. So this is really, kind of the first iteration that they wanted to deliver because it kind of solves a lot of problems that people are running into. And I know that there's some discussion going on, the scenarios you describe, like a music minus mix. So I want to do everything except vocals. I want to do everything except guitar, and kind of different combinations of that. So I think probably what you want, Nick, is maybe like an additional thing where you could say, like include in mix down column. So you could just say, okay, take everything and, deselect these and save that within a job queue. So I think that's kind of in discussion. So there'll be, from what I've heard, that we'll see kind of more functionality coming, but they wanted to be able to deliver a lot of the kind of long-standing feature requests that, or long-standing workflows that many people were looking for. All right, so I see Gareth K. Music is looking for bass parts for a song, so I would gladly contribute if you send me a song. All right. Be fun to get the bass out. Okay, so lots of great discussion going on. Okay, so I see Gareth K. Music wants people to hit the like button a lot. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure that you do that as well. Okay, question. Can we copy automation from one track to another? If yes, can you please show how? So let me just jump to a project we could show this quickly on. All right, so let's say I have automation in my kick track. Okay, so what I could do is I'm just going to select that automation. I'm going to copy. And let's come here. And I'm just going to do so we could do a paste, but there's also kind of, a paste time at origin. So let's say I will come here, copy, and go to this lane and paste, and I'll just enable automation. So you could do it just kind of in the selected range, or if you wanted to, select everything here. So it's copy. Let's go to another track. and paste, and we'll just enable the automation so that your automation between the different tracks is the same. So just standard cut, copy, paste. So we see just comment, only write and record 60s, 70s rock, something this digital stuff. Sometimes this digital stuff is too much. What other choice do I have? I mean, you could get like, it's just because you have a lot of functions doesn't mean that you have to utilize them. So, just set up, however many tracks you need to record and just, you could treat it very simply if you want to. So it's, it's really kind of, there's obviously a lot of features in Cubase, but you don't have to use them all. You don't have to let them get in your way. So, don't, if you know how to, record your stuff, that's great. Just record it in and, ideally, in a, utopian scenario, you have a band come in, they're so well rehearsed that they just are able to record everything in 1 or 2 takes, and you put all the faders at 0 dB and they've kind of self-mixed themselves and everything is great. But, and I think that all the bands in the 60s and 70s doing their production and talking to many producers, engineers from that time, love the flexibility that we have now, because stuff could take forever and they just wouldn't be able to fix certain things that we could do very easily now. So, but it's not limiting you. You could still have the same workflow for 60s and 70s productions that you do in Cubase. Okay, how do we export a 5.1 project into stereo 2.0 without hearing artifacts from LFE frequencies that are used in the 5.1? So, what you could do is, as you're kind of working in 5.1, you could constantly monitor between the two. So you could say, okay, I'm listening to, it's always a good idea if you're working 5.1 to go in a control room to have that set up, and you could just audition between the stereo, between like your 5.1 stereo and mono mixes for compatibility. So you kind of know what you're getting. But what most people end up doing is, doing a stereo mix, kind of saving that as a particular project, and then starting from the stereo mix and building the surround mix. I remember I was fortunate enough to, be working a lot with Chuck Ainlay when he did the surround mix of Dire Straits' Brothers in Arms. And I got flown over, it's like, can you go to London tomorrow to help Mark Knopfler out? So I got flown over first class. It was a great trip, and had to solve a problem. And I got to hear kind of the first version, the first master version of Brothers in Arms in 5.1 in Mark's British Grove Studios, which is an amazing facility. And, in talking to Chuck about the process was, he wanted to take, because they're doing kind of a new mix, but they do the stereo and the surround. And I think Chuck won a Grammy for it, well deserved. What Chuck's process was is, he wanted to listen to it's very important to try to mimic the stereo first. And then once the stereo mix was done and kind of matching as closely as he could, they would, at that point, build the 5.1 mixes. So many times if it's really critical, you kind of do separate mixes. But sometimes, you may be just folding down, but just, come over here to the control room and make sure that you're constantly folding down between your 5.1 stereo mono, if you have to kind of do it all within one project and have one deliverable. You could do that along the whole process as you're making any critical mix decision. But, for the ideal purpose would be just to make sure that you have, like a really critical thing, people would have a separate stereo and separate, surround mix. Okay. Okay, hey, what's the difference between Cubase and Nuendo? So Nuendo is going to have, until last week, they were at parity, so kind of feature-wise. So Nuendo will have all the Cubase features except for VST Transit, kind of a very minor difference. But Nuendo is going to offer some more functionality for doing sound design, some additional plugins like the randomizer. You could also do like plugins for doing like, kind of robot kind of voices. It's going to have ADR functionality. So if you do like dialogue replacement, like where you see actors go in and re-record all their lines in the studio from, that were recorded on, in the field or, on set, and there's, different things that they want to have the dialogue more control. Nuendo will have that functionality in a fantastic workflow. Nuendo will also have, if you're into game audio, so it's going to have, the game audio connect. So if you're working with Audio Kinetics Wise, you're going to be able to, have kind of a direct communication between that and Nuendo. And if you're doing Dolby Atmos, so a lot of post and game stuff is now kind of going with Dolby Atmos so that you have like speakers above you and height channels for your surround. Nuendo will support that. So those are some of the differences. And Steinberg has announced next Tuesday, probably before we do our Hangout, that they're going to be doing a Nuendo 11 preview event. So make sure you watch it out and you can see what all features are going to be in Nuendo 11. So just see, will Nuendo still contain all the Cubase features and updates in the new Nuendo 11? I can't really speculate on new features, but would I, again, watch the live stream on Tuesday. So I think that will have all the answers, but that's kind of how it's been in the past. So. Okay. Hi, Greg. Do you know if there's an advantage to use Dorco with Cubase, some better implementation than only MIDI, especially I think of articulation. So the articulations maps will, are the same from Cubase to Dorco. So that's a big thing. We'll see kind of in Cubase 11 the same fonts. So now we have the Smoofle font support inside of Cubase 11. So you could have the Bravura and Petaluma font. But, for transferring data, some people will just copy and paste directly from Cubase to Dorco. And I think, now that, it's the point where a lot of the core feature set is defined inside, like getting a lot of the core functionality in Dorco up to speed. And the team's done an amazing job of, being so incredibly prolific with features that, it's going to be an area of focus now that kind of, they're doing all the percussion and fretted instrument tablature functions and, extensive chords, that all the, that they're going to be concentrating more on some of the different integration aspects between the two programs. So I know that's kind of an extensive ongoing discussion as we speak. All right, so my chat field jumped. Let me just jump back. Hopefully I didn't lose any questions, but let me see. Okay, just finding my place. Bear with me. Sorry about that. Thanks for all the great questions. Okay. Okay, so, all right, so it says, hey, Greg, you helped me look into an automatic monitoring modes issue recording with ARA Melodyne clips already in tracks in Cubase 10.5. Same issue seems to be in C11. Can I ping you an email to look again? Yeah, please do. And I could kind of pass that on because there were some ARA, improvements, workflow improvements. So, okay, so a comment from Jeff Zabelski. My live track should be edited in original format, 24-bit 96K in Cubase first. Keep the format for Wavelab Pro or edit in CD format in Wavelab at 16:44:1. EQ better in Cubase or Wavelab. So I would try to get everything, I would do, all the multi-track stuff. How I've worked, and this is kind of how Wavelab started as a 2-track editor. And sometimes, you could do more than 2 tracks in the audio montage. But I would, keep everything at 24-bit 96K in Cubase, do my stereo mix down, and you could do it as a 32-bit 96K file. And then once you have your mix down file, make everything you can work in the mix, but you don't have to necessarily, totally squash the dynamics and put a lot of compression and stuff like that. But just do like what you normally would do, but not go so heavy on the master bus, especially with like dynamics and, EQ processing. So don't go so heavy there. Then I would take the stereo mix and import that into Wavelab, and you'll see, many of the same plugins and processes. So, but Wavelab has, fantastic metering. And, I think sometimes I like, sometimes just having a different perspective that Wavelab gives me. So I would take all the files into Wavelab and kind of treat the, if you're doing kind of delivering the audio for a CD or DVD or whatever, and I would treat that as a stereo mix in Wavelab. But, and it used to be like Wavelab has a multi-band, a really comprehensive suite of plugins called the Master Rig. But a lot of those, where we see the new multi-band imager is coming from the Master Rig. The multi-band compressors, is in the Master Rig. The frequency EQ is basically part of the Master Rig. So you have very similar processing capabilities. But I would take what I would do is take a stereo mix in Wavelab and be able to kind of just tweak it there a little bit. Okay, so a question. Hi there. What means when is warp audio marked with yellow or brown color in audio voice editing? Thanks. So let me just see if I could duplicate that. So let me try just going to a different project and maybe have some vocals in it. So let's say, if I'm in, make sure I'm in the right. Okay, so I'm just rereading again. So when is warp audio marked with yellow or brown color? So let's say if I've done free warping here. So I'm not sure. I think this is, warped audio here that I'm doing. So I'm not sure if I'm maybe just adjusting if I'm not seeing the colors, but maybe if you let me know if I'm in the wrong area of the program, so that would be helpful. Right, and I see another question right after. It says, I was wondering how to move the ruler along in seconds. Okay, I have a large video project which starts at 2 seconds in. I'd like the ruler to now start at the same time, 2 seconds into the project. Okay, so maybe this is with the warp marker. So I'll just jump back to this project here. I'll just revert this quickly. Okay, so let's say I want okay, so let's say I have this starting at measure 1. Okay, so all right, so it says okay, so all right, so getting back to the warp audio, maybe this is with the time warp tool. So, you know, if I come here, and what the time warp tool is going to allow you to do is to basically kind of set, you know, where the downbeats fall in your particular project. So, and as we do this and we have a tempo track, I will just open up a quick tempo track here so you can see. So I say, you know, this is where measure 4 starts. This is where measure 5 starts. And you could adjust kind of the bars and the grid line. So that might be where you see it kind of changing. So the warped audio mark with yellow or brown color. So, you know, maybe this is what's going on with the color when you see that. But now when you switch tools, so that allows you to kind of move the tempo based on that. So let's take a look at the offset question. So I have a large video project which starts at 2 seconds in. I'd like the ruler to now start at the same time 2 seconds into the project. So let's say this is starting, I'm going to switch my master time to seconds. And let's say this is where our project is starting at 2 seconds. So I'd like the ruler now to start at the same time 2 seconds into the project. So I think we could do this with an offset. So let's just say display time offset. We'll set this for all right, and it could be kind of critical what you do here. So it says you modified the time code offset. Do you want the project content at its time code position? I think if we say no, that so we can see, you know, so you could just see that that has done the offset, and that's going to start it at 0 if you wanted to, or let's say if I do that again, so we have 2 seconds, I will. So, you know, depending on how you answer the question, but just come over here to the offsets and do a display time offset. And you can do that in seconds, and that will get you there. All right, good to see Harry Sam on Hangout. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Okay, so I see a question. My stereo out is not on the right side. How do I move it into a separated position like I have? So let me just jump back to a different project. We have more tracks. Okay, so I'll activate this. So if we wanted to go to our mixer here, so let's say I will always want the stereo out to be kind of anchored. So you click on the visibility tab and then zones. So at the top, click on visibility, and then you have 3 dots. So you'll see these kind of in the center. So these can be freely positioned. If I put a track, let's say my bass in the left, now my bass is anchored in the left-hand side. If I put it here, it's going to be in the middle zone, but if I want to go to my input outputs, I can now anchor that on the right-hand side, which is what I do in a lot of my projects. So no matter where I am in the mix console, my master fader is always kind of fixed on the right-hand side. So once again, go to from your track inspector, click on the visibility tab and then click on zones at the bottom. And then you could just move that. So if I want my master fader on the left or the right hand side, you could just kind of fix that accordingly. Okay, so just see, how do we, let me see if I have a good example to show this. So how do I align live drums with tempo detection? So all right, so this probably be a horrible musical mash up. But I'm going to revert this quickly. So let's say I want to make these live drums match up to the particular, like that jazz track. So I will import quick audio file here, and I think okay, so now when I look at this particular track, okay, and let me see if my track is. Okay, so let's say I have like two different. So I have like my jazz track and a rock track here that are different tempos. And I wanted these to match up somehow magically. So I'm going to do a tempo detection. So let's say I want the live drums to match the feel of this particular track. So what I want to do now is to, and first I'm just going to separate these slightly in time. So I'm going to take this particular file and I'm going to do a tempo detection of it. Okay. And so we figured out what the tempo is of that particular file. So I'm going to select this file and go to project or go to audio rather, to advanced. And what I want to do is to take all these tempo changes here and I want to embed those tempo changes into the audio file. So I'm going to select set definition from tempo. So I'm going to just, and we can do this at the project level or in the audio file itself. Okay, so now I'm going to do kind of the same for my drums here. So let's say I'll just take some overhead tracks. I'll take my overhead track and I'll do a tempo detection of this. So go to project and let's say tempo detection. Okay, and I think our original track was at 100 here. Okay, sorry I don't have this kind of pre-done. All right, so I'm going to take all of these tracks and take it out of musical mode for now. And I'm going to do just a tempo detection again. I think this is pretty steady. So I'll just do it for my overhead track. Okay, so now we have tempo detection for this part and this part. So I want to take my live drums and I'm going to select all of my drum parts and come over here to advanced, and we're going to do the set definition from tempo again. Okay. So let's find kind of where our downbeat is here. Okay, so and what I'm going to do now is just kind of take this whole set of drum files I'll just give myself a little more space here. And now like these two different files will kind of, you know, line up. Let me just find kind of where the downbeat is. So once I kind of find, let me just move this track to the top here. Make it a little easier. Okay. And let's say I'll move my signature track all the way up here. Okay, so we're going to take just our drums. Okay, I'll just quickly take off my snap, and let's say this is so I'm just going to line that up to the downbeat. And now I wanted to just find maybe the downbeat of one of the drums here. Okay, so I'll just take this particular drum file and line it up where the drums kind of kick in. So now this is probably gonna not fit musically, but we'll give it a shot. So the tempo of these drums are now kind of matching and following the same tempo. So two completely different recordings. So if I just want to take the volume of this down, so these drums are following the tempo of the jazz track. So even though we've done a tempo detection on this, I could take any other live multi-track recording and have those tempos just kind of lock in just like that. So, and these are really disparate, very different files, but you can see just with a couple minutes and just line it up. And once, so what you want to do is find out what the tempo is of that particular file. And, once you do that, embed the tempo changes by going to advanced to set definition from tempo, and do that for the other files. And then whatever time that you have, whatever tempo you have, they'll both automatically, gravitate and follow the tempo changes that you've defined. So I see a question. Hey, Greg, what's your favorite new feature in Cubase 11? Probably the thing that initially grabbed me was the supervision plugin. Just, because I've always kind of, for a long time I had a laptop with Wavelab that I would feed audio from my control room into a separate instance of Wavelab just to have meters on the laptop. So I think having that a part of Cubase is really phenomenal. I think there's a lot of, super strong features. The frequency EQ, the multiband imager, I think is, really great. The sampler track, I think, is very creative, but, probably my favorite personal one would be maybe the supervision plugin. Okay, so I see. So hello, Greg. Can I store a channel strip preset as the default one? So let's take a quick look. I'm not sure if you can. All right, and let me just see if I go to a new project. Yeah, so it doesn't look like it. You can save one as a default. So, but you could save your own preset, but not one that will open up by default by saving as default. Not that I know of, but. All right. So question, will Cubase ever consider a Linux release? I try not to humor Microsoft any more than I have to. I am going to build a new PC for music after CPU prices come down for me. 5600X is great single core work. I think I haven't heard of any plans for development in Linux. We have some people that passionately request it every so often, but I think Windows 10 is a great operating system for audio, and if you hate Microsoft or not, it's it still works and it's a known entity. And for different versions, I think it's been very stable. With Mac, it's been a little. Every new OS has presented a lot of challenges for compatibility with hardware and plugins. So, that could be problematic for, kind of keeping systems very consistent and stable. And as, some parts require new OS and some don't, so I think, but I haven't heard of any plans necessarily for having, no particular new plans for a Linux version. All right, so you see from Ambient Dave, hi Greg, really enjoying the new Cubase 11. What new features, improvements should I look out for? Thanks. The MIDI editing was kind of, I would say there's 4 main themes The MIDI editing improvements, such as, the bends, being able to, do your pitch bends with, be able to, even getting into, polyphonic voicings. If you do that, that was always kind of annoying to do previously. So the MIDI stuff, the global tracks, the scale assistant, features that people had requested on these Hangouts, we see them, being implemented. Probably the second area I think is really great is, the creativity you have with the sampler track. So we can see that, it was a first generation initially, and I think that's a really robust improvement. The audio plugins is, especially Squasher, if you're doing a lot of EDM type work, is a phenomenal tool. Supervision is great. Little things like, even the spectral layers 1 that comes with it, being able to unmix vocals is pretty frightening. And, being able to export job cues, is like, something that was like not necessarily in the creative process, but something that was just always very tedious, and where you can make a lot of mistakes, and a part of the program that, or part of the production process rather, that could be just really uncreative and just very robot-like, has been greatly simplified with the job cues. So those are some of the main areas that I would kind of, focus on and checking out. All right, so I see a question from Ace. Good to see you. Says, hope you and your family are doing well. We are. Thanks for asking. On Cubase 10.5, it's like Cubase 10.5 was so last week. Anyway, just kidding. How do I record several back-to-back vocal recordings in a specified range and then be able to pick and choose the best one? So if you wanted to just quickly do that. So let's say I want it to, do like vocal comping. What I would do is just kind of come over here. Let's say I'll just do a couple bars, and I'm just going to put it into like a cycle record mode. And as we do this, every pass will now be, every time we record a cycle, it's going to show up as a new take on top. So it's going to kind of, obscure and cover up the previous recording. So this will be our 4th or 5th pass. And let's say we'll do one more. All right. So, and what you hear is kind of the last take, but you'll see this little thing for lanes, and you could open up this view, and this will show you all of your different takes that you've recorded. And there's this little hand tool that's a comp tool. So I could just select kind of if I wanted to select different sections of different takes, you could do that and create your comp just like that. So click on the lanes tool, and then you could see each of the different vocal takes kind of, and this way they all share the same processing, the same EQs, and you could edit it quite quickly and choose the best parts of different takes. Okay, so I just see a question from Andy Nicholson. Anybody know if there's a way to set default extension type for a new audio track, spectral layers, Melodyne, etc.? So I haven't worked with on my system. I'm still waiting. I'll see how I'll have to try to get an update of Melodyne for my system, but I think you could select the audio file and then kind of choose which layer it's on. And then once you have, and I haven't tried it with other ARA2 extensions, but if you have, something that you might be able to do is once you have it set here, So let's say if I open up like my spectral layers extension, and this would probably work the same for other tools. If you click on add event, and then as soon as you click on that, I think it's going to add it to the same extension. So I could just say, okay. So I could click here, see this, and then click here. And, you could just, if you have the, add event option kind of enabled, that will take, I think, the same extension, but I'm not sure if you could differentiate it between, these were spectral layers, these were Melodyne, etc. Okay, so I see a question from Taylor. Do I have to install Remote Bridge to get to UR22 UR22C to operate properly? I don't use a remote control, so I never installed it. Could that be the cause of my issue with the mic sound on one side? I don't think that would do it. And Taylor, if you want to just kind of reach out to me, maybe I could quickly remotely look at your system for you on your UR22C. So if you want to reach out via email, you have my contact info. Okay. Okay. So I just saw someone was saying that the audio level is low, but it seems like it was just her headphones. So that's good, because I've had a couple times where, my audio will cut out in some of the older Google Hangout software. The audio would cut out and you wouldn't know. So as I would be behind in questions. Okay. So I just see question. Did you know Mark, a general manager at A&M back in the 90s? No, I was just there once. Kind of a little act I was playing with. We were kind of, being maybe solicited by some producers who were working there at the time. So we did a lot of work. I think they're doing Rattle and Hum there when we were dealing with them. Didn't work out though. So now I had to have a normal job. So question. Okay. So I see a question, that you probably can't answer, but it's been a while since there was a version update to Hallion. Are there any plans for another soon? So all the teams at Steinberg are kind of, as you'll see with stuff coming up, you saw kind of a pretty monumental Cubase release. You see, I think we'll learn a lot of great things about Nuendo starting next week. But I think the Hallion team has also been very busy as well. So it's actually probably, interestingly enough, I think, the teams at Steinberg, even though they haven't been in the office, I think they've done a great job at kind of managing, the projects. And I don't think that they've probably been a bit ahead on meeting different milestones. All right, so is the first Cubase now considered a vintage DAW? So I think I saw that comment on Facebook. So, I guess it's old, but like I wouldn't, if you were to take the Cubase VST when it first came out on Mac or PC and you never updated it, that would be a vintage DAW. But I think Cubase is a living, evolving tool that, gets more and more powerful and more relevant with every release. So I think older versions, like if you never upgrade it, like your Cubase on Atari, I would consider it a vintage kind of workstation. But I think, with Cubase 11, I think it's, just kind of defining, the feature sets that, or what the industry is going to. I think that you see Cubase 11 kind of being the innovator again, and kind of, like I remember working in studios, I was like an assistant engineer at a big studio in New York City, and it used to be, the guys who, there was like, the producer, the engineer, the assistant, a second assistant, and then often you'd have a guy that was the MIDI guy. And, the MIDI guy was like the low rung on the totem pole. And now you see kind of the MIDI guy that's kind of taken over the whole studio. And I remember when I decided to leave my studio gig, the owner of the studio kind of pulled me aside and he's like, "You're going to work for a software company? He's like, what are you doing? You have a great career that you could have here." And I'm just like, I think this is going to be where it's heading, And ironically later, he's like, "Oh, I ran into him at a NAMM show and he was doing some plugins." And he's like, "Yeah, I thought you were kind of dumb then, but you're probably pretty smart." So I don't think we would consider, I think an old, like Cubase and Atari, I would consider vintage. So, and I think it was, there's a recent Netflix series that Tom Hulkenberg did music for. I think it's White Lines or White Lies. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. And it was kind of set in the late 80s, early 90s. And he actually got to be authentic, and I lent him some of my Cubase Atari dongles. And I think he did a lot of the sequencing on it in Cubase for Atari just to be kind of very authentic to the era. So, so that would be I would consider that vintage, but I think Cubase, it's a very mature program that's constantly evolving. Okay, so you see, hey, when you use Z to focus on a track, it works great. But when I snap out of focus with Z again, every track becomes minimum in size and Y axis. Okay, so let's say I'll just open up. Let's say I'll just jump here. So let's say I hit this and, we see kind of that. So, if you hit Z again, let me see, and you mentioned, but when I snap out of focus, so let's say if I come here, and let's say if I go to the lower zone, and let's say if I'll activate the project here first. Okay. So say this is my area of focus, and I hit Z again. So it seems to kind of revert back. Okay, so you're saying, okay, so let's say I hit Z, and I hit Z. So let's say that's with it in focus. So let's say I hit Z, switch to the area of focus again, and then hit Z. It seems to return back. So depending what your area of focus is, let me just do this in a different area of focus because selecting it in the mix console may select the track. But that kind of seems to make sense to me, but let me... So I'm just going to say, so when you use Z to focus on a track, it works great. But when I snap out of focus with Z again, every track becomes minimum size again in Y axis. So I think that's just like, think of it as like a quick temporary edit, like, okay, I want to see what's going on there. You could do that. But another method to do this is if you go to edit to enlarge selected track, you could also just, any track that you have selected here can be enlarged quite easily. So okay, so we had a question on pan law. So can we explain that? So let's take a look. So you could have different, like if we double a signal in, let's say, for an audio signal, like doubling the sound increases it by 3 dB. So we'll have that just as kind of maybe a quick thought. So I'm just going to kill some of my inputs here. Okay, so let's say I'm going to just put And I'll just, okay. So I'll put a stereo track here, and I'm just going to put like a, and I'll kill my control room volume here so it's not super annoying, but I'll just put a test tone generator on here under tools. Okay, so let's say we have just slightly different tools here. All right, so I'm going to go to, when I adjust my panning, you know, we could see that, you know, we could have, so, you know, as we adjust this, so I'm going to adjust my pan law settings, and we could do this on, I could set it to equal power. So let me see if this makes sense what I'm doing. So when I pan, you know, so when you have the pan laws going on, so I'll just kind of disable that track. So, you know, when we double a track, you can make it, you know, as you know, let's say you have a left and right channel and you combine the left and right channel. Maybe if I just do this to illustrate this a little better. So let's say, you know, you have your left and right channel. Let's see if I could show this graphically a little bit. Okay, so as we, this may not kind of show what I was thinking, but, you know, as we increase, you know, if we have two sources, two channels on a stereo track, and we bring them together, so if you add, you know, two channels together, that's going to increase it by 3 dB. So what people often use pan law to do, and you can find this in the project setup, is to just set it, you know, if, you know, people use this to kind of manipulate how much information that they could have in the stereo image. So if you have it set to, you know, 0, you know, if you have your, you know, equal power, so as you pan a source from left to right, it'll be kind of equal power. If you want it to be, you know, minus, you know, and you could also have -6, -3 dB. So, you know, combining two sounds, so say we take a left and a right channel, we combine them in the center, that would make it 3 dB louder. You may want that, you may not want that. So the pan law allows you to adjust how much of the volume will decrease as you pan out. So a lot of people will kind of manipulate that and kind of put stuff on a far edge. And, you know, some of my favorite mixers, you know, kind of live and die. And that was like, you know, one of the tricks that people would use to get kind of, you know, wider sounding mixes naturally is to manipulate the pan law. So, you know, play around with it, but that's kind of the intention, is how much of the signal kind of degrades as you pan out to different sides. All right, so you just see how to open Cubase. So, you know, once it's installed, you know, you just start the program, you know, from your Windows or your Mac. You know, you go to applications and start, or put it into your dock or kind of your little start tray, you know, in Windows, you'd see the window there, and that's how you could start Cubase. Okay. So question, is there any way to render audio file or just melody into a MIDI track? So let's jump here. So let's say, okay, I want to go to this particular track, and so let's say, like, and we could do this for monophonic sources. I'll just do one with our melody here. And you could do this through Very Audio. So I'll double click here and we'll go to Very Audio. And under functions, so once it kind of does its analysis under functions, you can come right here and say extract MIDI. We could place it onto a new track. So I'll just kind of come right there, and now it's taken it, and that's our MIDI data that's been extracted from the melody. So, and as we synchronize the two, you could just see that. So go to your monophonic audio source, and then from the sample editor, go to the Very Audio tab. You want to do its analysis, and then under functions, extract MIDI. Okay, so we're just seeing comments on curfews in California. So happy hours are starting soon. All right. Okay, so question, is there a way to quickly retrieve different upper toolbar and lower transport section setups? All right, so let's say if I wanted to come here, so let's say if I have this set up, so I don't want my toolbars, and let's say I don't want let's say transport buttons. And this may be, I'm going to save this as a workspace maybe and see. I don't think this will work, but okay. And I'll just activate these again. So I think these will be independent of the track space, but okay, so I'll just come here to my workspaces. Yeah, so you could save presets of them. So, you could save presets and kind of switch between those, but no like super fast way to, hit a button and maybe toggle between presets on the uppers or okay. All right, so I see, is it possible to do an effects rack like in Ableton Live? So I'm not sure I'm not familiar with that function. I don't use Ableton. But if it's, if you wanted to, take, a lot of people miss this. So say if I add an effects channel track, so say I start off with the reverb, and once I come to that effects channel track, let me just all right. So, so say this is the one that we just created. You could have up to 16 plugins that you could have going on within that one particular send. So, so each send effect that you have, so you have the 8 sends, and you could have 100 different effects channels, and you could send to 8 sends here if you wanted to, and each send could have 16 different, effects stacked on it. But I'm not familiar with what the effects rack is in Ableton, but maybe if you could expand on that, that would be helpful, or someone else could. So I see question, got a question. I have 2 Focusrite interfaces and I want to link them together and have it when it shows up as one interface in Cubase so I can get more inputs and outputs. Is that possible? It really depends on how the interface is designed. So generally USB interfaces aren't stackable. I'm not aware of any companies that have like a stackable interface. You could do it on Firewire interfaces and Thunderbolt audio interfaces. But many times you can't stack multiple USB interfaces. But it's really just, it could be a limitation, but I have some Firewire interfaces still in my studio. I have the older Steinberg MR816s, and they still work great. So, and I have 2 of those stacks. Like I have 16 analog in and out, as well as, I guess 32 channels of ADAT in and out as well. So, but it really depends on the interface, and if the interface isn't, if the interface isn't really set up for that, then, Cubase won't be able to rectify that. So I just see from Jeff Zabelski, I bought a trackpad for my iMac, but fine editing is still a bit jumpy. What's the best mouse or pad for fine editing in Cubase in your experience? I've gone through lots of different mice, and I hate the Apple Magic Mouse. I think it's, I really personally do not like that. And I have many Logitech $20 mice that work great. And there's one because I do lots of videos and tutorials, like Logitech actually makes a quiet mouse. So every time you click on a mouse, it doesn't end up on a microphone. But the mouse that I'm using now is, but I got a mouse, and it's kind of a generic $20 Amazon mouse. And I could, because I go back and forth in my setup here. I have a laptop. I have I'm reading the stream on a Microsoft Surface Go, and I'm running my Cubase on a Mac. So I have a keyboard and mouse that I could switch back and forth between all the computers live. So I have kind of a mouse that works under Bluetooth and 2 Bluetooth channels and a wireless channel. So I could use the same computer keyboard and mouse regardless of which program. But I've had great luck with a generic Logitech $20 mouse, and finding editing to be fine. Okay, so I see JVI says that he's learning again, as always. Thanks, and yes, thanks for asking. My family and I are doing great. Okay. Okay, so it says, question, you explained how to get chords from chord track to chord pads. Awesome. What about the reverse, from chord pads to chord track? Hope that's possible. Let's go ahead and I'll just do a new project here. All right, so I'll just load up a quick preset here. All right, so say we'll do D minor. I'll add a quick instrument track. Okay, adjust my control room up. All right, so say. So, so we might have to do this as a 2-step process, but let me just. So I think if we drag this out, let's see what happens. Okay, so if I drag it out, I could, then go to chord track here and create chord symbols, based on the MIDI part. So let me just try that a couple places here. So as we just kind of drag these out, you could often just, drag it to the project window and back. But sometimes, let me just see if we drag it straight to a chord track. Yeah, okay. So we could do this. That's my one new thing I learned in this Hangout, as I always learn. So you could just drag it right out, because the chord track is, the chord track, so just drag it out. I should have just looked for the simple approach with that. So just, take it and drag to the chord track like that. So. Okay. Okay, just kind of reading through. Okay, so I just see comment from Jeff. I have a heavy bass, but its sustain is unbelievable, and so are VST eyes. All right. Okay. And I see Ted Springman is looking for a double bass, so he says he might buy a half-size bass. So they're fun instruments. I'm glad I was able to buy one after college. All right, so I see someone is very excited for the new Nuendo. Okay, hi Greg. Is there a way to export stems to a mix template? Okay. So if you kind of have a mix template, so if we come over here, let's say if we exported, let's see if there what kind of the easiest way. Let me just jump to this project again and okay, so when we do our export audio mix down, so this may be a two-step process, but this is maybe what I would do. So if you have, let's say it's just a mix template. All right, so I would, as we do our export audio mix down, I would say, okay, we're going to do our multiple files. Or what you could do, depending. So if you're doing processing, you could do your multiple files, add it to the queue, and you could after export have it, mix down, create a new project. So let's say I'll just do this quickly. So we'll say start queue export. So we've now done our batch export. It's going to create a new project, and here's all of the files that we have. And at this point, if you have your mix template, so let's say if I was here and I have a mix template, so let's say I'll just do a new project. I'll save this. Okay, and then if I have, let's say, my template, so say if I just did a new, and this was my template that I was working with, and I had, you know, a whole bunch of audio files. Then what you could try to do is, you know, so let's say we're starting in our template, we could just import tracks from project, and I will go to our Amos Moses, and thought we saved it in here, but you know, at this point you could just take that mix down file, and then you could actually insert your destination track. If you have the same names, you could actually choose, you know, similar names based on destination track. So if you've gone through and named, you know, with the naming scheme from the original one in different templates, you could import and it would go into your kick, you know, 1, 2, 3, bass, vocals, guitar, lead, solo, vox, and the names can be carried over as well. So you could try like that 2-step process. Okay, question. What is your goal when mixing? I always feel so lost when I'm mixing. Guidance would help. So, you know, mixing could be tough starting off, you know, and you have to figure out that, you know, some people spend too much time over mixing because you have such flexibility. You know, I find some of the best mixers are people that can do it quickly and are very kind of focused and they look for problems, you know. So, you know, I see a lot of people spending too much time using too many plugins. You know, just because you can have a compressor on every single track doesn't mean that you have to use it. Just because you can have a separate reverb or delay on every single track doesn't mean that you have to use it. So I think kind of keeping it simple, making sure that, you know, you know, I would sometimes envision it, you know, like if you were to visualize an orchestration on a piano, you know, you have to have like your low, you know, your low notes, your middle notes, and your high notes. And think of a drum set as kick, snare, hi-hat. And within each of those frequencies, like your kick can't be all low frequencies. It has to have a balance of the harmonics and the frequencies within each of those elements has to be balanced for kick. You know, your kick has to have the right amount of highs and mids in it as well, proportionally, as does your snare. And if those things are kind of out of balance, like, you know, harmonically, that's always going to be challenging. You know, I see a lot of people trying to fix stuff in a mix where it's an arrangement problem. You know, the best mixes that people will have are when the musicians naturally arrange their parts, you know, and that's why, like, you know, Motown was so perfect because they could have 3 guitarists on a track and they're all like, okay, you play here, I'm going to play in this range, you play up in that range, and you play a different part, you copy the melody here, and they could just arrange the parts. So, you know, it's okay to spend a lot of time on arrangements, but, you know, and have a reference material, you know, so that you know what it sounds like, what you're kind of shooting for. And, you know, make sure that, you know, other tips, you know, when you're mixing, you know, a lot of people mix too loud. You know, Elliot Shiner, who's, you know, probably one of the most highly regarded mixing engineers, you know, he mixes kind of like this level. very, very soft, and other people are just kind of blowing their ears out all day. And he's just very, he's like, can I hear the vocal? Can I hear the bass at this level? Can I hear the, and you have to very actively listen when you're mixing at very low levels. So, if it sounds really great here and it sounds really great on bad speakers, then it's going to sound better on other speakers, in better environments. So, keeping things very simple can really help in your mixing process. So, but it's, and you make a lot of mistakes and you figure it out, just like anything. You get your 10,000 hours in. Okay. Okay. Hi, Greg and guys. How do I import my Media Bay favorites into Cubase 11 so they show up in my right-hand zone? All right. So all you have to do is on the right-hand zone is just go to favorites. So once you have it done over here, sorry, just got an email from the club. All right, so just I'll try to get the level up of the music. So we'll try to get that up. Thanks for the email. Okay, so when we want to actually kind of work with our different media base, and we want to create a favorites folder, all you have to do is we'll come over here and open up the media bay. So, and I will go to, let's say, this computer, and I want to go to okay, so I'm going to just navigate and define a favorite folder here. So let's say projects. Okay, so let's say I wanted this as a favorite. So I could right click here and add to favorite. So we'll give it a name. So we'll just call it SL1. And then you see when it automatically showed up right here. So we could click on any folder that we want, and we could do this in the right-hand zone as well. So as we click, we go home, you just click on favorites, and anything that's been defined as a favorite will show up directly there. So if you go to your browser, your file browser, you could set any of these up and just right click, and any of the different projects here. So you say, okay, I want that, right click on it, say add to favorites. And then when we go back home, we could just say favorites, and it just shows up directly right there in your favorites category. Okay. Okay, so I see when playing chords on a MIDI keyboard whilst in the key editor, is there a way of displaying the chords I'm playing? So let's go ahead and take a quick look. All right, let me just... All right, I'll just find a slightly better sound. Sorry about that. Okay, so when we're in our key editor, I think if we go to the status line, let me just find the right octave here. So I don't think it shows you here, but if we had, let's say if I just recorded something, and I'll just solo the editor here. So let's just say, okay, so while it's in record, I could see right here the chord display. And we need to go to the status line and make sure the status line is checked. And let me see if that makes a difference if we're just playing. So while in record, you can see it, or while it's playing back. You could see the changes here. So let's say, but if you don't have that status line enabled, just by clicking here, but you may have to be in record enable, or in record, or playing. Let's say if I just hit play, then it'll show the chords. Okay, so a question. I've been around a bit. Sorry, my timeline just jumped on me. And the question was about, can you explain stems? So let me just jump back. Looks like Gareth's daughter is visiting the Hangout. She probably wants her pizza on Friday night. Okay. Okay, so from Jeff, I've been around a bit, but first time start hearing a lot about stems. Can you explain stems and their functionality, importance, and understanding them? So a lot of times when we're working in Cubase, we may have different tracks. You know, if we look at our project here, we'll see that there's going to be a lot of, you know, different tracks that go in and out at different times. When we hand this off to maybe a record company or to someone else who's using a slightly different program, we may want to make it as easy as possible for them to work with. So what we could do is, instead of having our files that are kind of a bit proprietary to Cubase, where, you know, tracks are going in and out, what a stem is, it'll just kind of render an audio file that will be equal length for all of the different projects. So this way I could, you know, and that's what an artist or producer engineer would hand off to like a record company, you know, because it used to be that they would own the master tapes. But now what record companies own is kind of the recordings. Now, how people actually, you know, got all of their effects and everything, that's, you know, a lot of producers and engineers want to keep that very kind of, that's very sensitive information and their craft, and they don't want to necessarily pass on something, and they want a file format that will be kind of future proof. Because let's say, you know, if you did a program, you know, you did a project in one program, that company went out of business, and, you know, 10 years from now, you may not be able to open up that file. So what people will do is kind of take everything that they've created creatively and create stems. And the stem is kind of like an equal length audio file that starts at, you know, one point, and they're all the same length, and every single file will be kind of rendered into it, so that in any other program, you could just open it up and hit play, and all of the signal routing, all the editing, everything has been just kind of automatically incorporated. So, and, you know, when you look at it, it may look a bit like, let's see if we still have the project with some stems in it. Yeah. So, but basically, it's a way of having all the files rendered to one consistent length so that you could just drop it into any program. And that's often what record companies want to have delivered so that their files can play back in the future in kind of a operating system, application independent file format. All right, just see a comment, Greg, having a dedicated lyric track as per the Cubase 11 new features Hangout would be a great new feature. So I've been trying to get a lyric track. I've been lobbying. So that was my passive aggressive way of communicating that to some of our development team, so, but that's great. I'll pass on to customers who want a lyric track. Okay. All right. So I see a question. How can I start the tempo at 0 with a 2-track stereo instrumental without trimming the beginning to start at 0 on the timeline? All right. So let me just. All right. Bear with me just a second. All right, so we'll take a look at this. All right. So let's look at this particular project again. Okay, so let's say we're, okay, how can I start tempo at 0 with the 2-track instrumental without trimming the beginning to start at 0? Okay, so I'm not sure if you need to have when you say tempo at 0, so how can I start the tempo at 0 with a 2-track stereo instrumental without trimming the beginning to start at 0 on the timeline? So I'm not sure if it's tempo or time. So let's say I have this and I want, my tempo to actually, let's say we have some dead space at the beginning. Maybe this is kind of what the question is asking. You could, if you wanted to, again, go to your project setup and let's say, okay, I want to do display bar offsets. So let's say if I wanted this to be like, 1 bar offset, so here we could just say, I want it like, not the beginning of the file, but I wanted this to start right at measure 1. So I'm not sure when you say, you can't start tempo at 0 with the 2-track instrumental without trimming the beginning. So if you wanted that to, your measure 1 to be there, you could put negative measures in and just kind of offset that. And you could do that just by going to Shift S and going to the display bar offset. So, but if I'm misunderstanding, let me know. So I see a question from Lauren. Hi, from New York. Will Cubase support 7.14 soon? So that's going to be one of the distinctions between Cubase and Nuendo. So I think Cubase will be doing, it's been fixed at 5.1, but if you want to do 7.14 to do Dolby Atmos, that could be a bit more involved. And that's, some of the, so Nuendo is, perfectly suited. I think you could do 22.2 channels, but you could do 7.14 inside of Nuendo. And it's perfectly suited for that. And if you're doing 7.14 stuff, make sure you watch the Nuendo live presentation next week on Tuesday. Hi, Greg. I'm new here. Is there a way to clear all inserts on Inspector and edit channel settings? Not one by one, not big issue, but sometimes can be painful. So let's go ahead and take a quick look. So let's say we'll have some different inserts going on. Okay, so I think if we say that there's, let me just close these out really quickly. Let's see, I think we can, okay, so if you hold down the Command or Control key and click here, we could just say Reset Rack, and all the inserts will be gone. So let's say, so once again, just grab this, click here with the Control or Command key, and reset the rack. And once again, it's all cleared just like that. Okay. Hi, Greg. Is there going to be a index for the C11 new feature edition? It would be nice to be able to link to the features when we see questions on Facebook and stuff. That's a good point. I will go ahead and work on it. Maybe over the weekend, I'll try to do that as well. But there are kind of, very kind of similar videos. There's kind of a whole series of Cubase walkthrough videos as well. But, and I wanted people to kind of get a sense, and we've had a lot of views on it. I think it's like 17,000 views. But I wanted people to also, kind of watch the whole thing in its entirety so you can kind of get the understanding of the new features in Cubase 11. But I will go through and work on an index maybe over the weekend just so you could point to very specific things and just share that with Facebook. So thanks for mentioning that, Terry. All right. So we see Terry Dean says he's maybe he was like number 76 and he wants to know who was going to be 77. So if you want to hit the like button, that would be super helpful. It allows us to do a lot more of these and continue to do these Hangouts. Okay, how can I bounce MIDI to audio in Cubase Elements? I don't think I have Cubase Elements 11, but I think you may just have to export. Let me just take a quick look. So excuse me if it's kind of the older version. I haven't updated my elements yet, but we'll take a quick look. So with elements, I don't think you have render in place. All right, so I'll just come over here. Let's. All right, sorry, this isn't routed out. So let's say I have my MIDI that's going out to the virtual instrument, and now what I want to do is just do, because I don't think that there's any render in place, but if I wanted to, I could just solo a particular track. And I'll just set my left and right locators around it, and we could do export audio mix down. We'll give it a name, say drum mix. And we could choose to, after export, to create audio track, and just click on export audio, and then we could copy it to the project window, and we chose to have that split. But again, so just select it, go to, and if you have multiple, if you want to do it like one track at a time, that's when we could do export audio mix down. And, you know, we wanted to not split channels, click on create audio track. And at that point, you'll have kind of your file just mixed down. Just like that. So that's how you can do it in Cubase Elements. It's obviously more robust in the higher end versions, but you can still get there. Okay, so let's say if we saw that we in this how with the inserts, and let's say if we want to do it in the mix console as well. So let's say if I'm here and I go to my inserts. So here, if I just control click, let's say if I'm in, see if in the mix console, if we could, so you could bypass them all here, or let's see if we, and one other thing you could do, you know, like one by one is just drag it to like an empty space. You could do that as well. But, you know, within the inspector, you could do that quite easily. Okay. Question. Why does MediaBay take a long time to load samples? Any workarounds? So sometimes when people are working in MediaBay, you know, there's a couple of preferences that could affect this. And also, you know, depending on if all of your samples are on a particular, you know, I've seen sometimes, you know, people putting it onto like all their sample content onto like a USB 3 drive. And sometimes you may have to go through and adjust the, you know, the bandwidth for USB ports, and can sometimes go to sleep. So you may have to adjust that, but a lot of times MediaBay could always be scanning in the background. So one of the preference is where you could, you know, where MediaBay will scan only while MediaBay is open. Make sure that that is unchecked. So a lot of times MediaBay may be, you know, if you open up MediaBay, you know, you could start it scanning only when it's open if that's on. So sometimes the very first several times until MediaBay has collected information on all of your files may take longer. So just kind of be aware of that. And, you know, if it could be that, you know, it's on a USB 3 drive, that could be problematic as well, like an external drive, you know. So if you have all your content like on an SSD, that would be ideal. Okay, question. How can we remove a meter from a supervision preset? I haven't tried that yet, so let's give it a shot. So say if I come here, okay, let me just go. So I'll just build one up from new. I'm sure there's something simple that I'm probably missing. So I'm kind of missing this, having a brain cramp on it. Yeah, so I'm not seeing kind of the obvious, easy way to remove a meter, but I will kind of look into it if you want to email me. Sorry, I couldn't figure that out. All right, so I'll move on. But you can send me an email to clubcubase@steinberg.de. Okay, so we have a question. How do we change visibility settings for mixer channels? So once we have, let's say, our mixer open, so let's say if I'm in my full screen mixer here, I'll just kind of activate this. So we could just add configurations. So let's say, like I don't want to see my input channels, or I will come, let's say, let me add some more tracks here. Okay, so now I go back to my mix console and I want to see these particular channels. We could add configuration. So we'll call this 1. And let's say we'll add a configuration here called 2. And let's have all of them selected and active. All right, so now it could just kind of just select between your different configurations just like that. And you could have, I think, 8 of them recallable by keyboard shortcuts. Then you can see all of them. All right, so see, I may get to play bass on a track. That'll be fun. From Gareth. Okay, so see, question: when I load my VST into Cubase, the song which I'm working on kind of stops, and when it's loaded, the song plays. And the arrangement, same when I turn it on and off. Plugins help. That's because, as plugins are sometimes added, what Cubase does, it may stop for a second because it has to, adjust the timing of the playback engine to compensate for the latency. So at that point, when it's being added, it's kind of quickly recalculating all the delay compensations for all the plugins that you're working with. So that's kind of what's going on. Okay, so thank you so much for your help. My question is, how can I make the playhead come back to the beginning of my loop when I hit stop? When I hit my spacebar, it just goes to the beginning of this song. Okay, so there's a kind of a playhead preference. Let's say if I'm playing here, and I'll actually just put on a real song so you could hear it, be more inspiring. Okay, so let's say I'm going to do my play position from here. Okay, I'm just going to make sure my routing is set up. All right. So, there's two different transport preferences. You could just hit one. When you do this, if I stop and hit one. So there's preferences. If you go to your preferences here, and on transport, you'll see return to start position on stop. So if I start right from here, and I will just... So now when I hit the spacebar, it goes right to where I started playing. So if I wanted to go right back to where I started, like on beat 2, roughly. And I think sometimes I have that preference kind of toggled. So it can change between your start position or it will kind of stop at the current position. So if I hit stop now, it'll just stop right where it was and continue on like that. But you could always just hit 1 on the numeric keypad. Will take you to the left locator, 2 for the right locator. So if you're like, okay, just want to come here, now hit 1, hit 2. So if you're working within loops, but you could kind of toggle the behavior of if you wanted to, like when you hit stop, for it to go back to where you started or to stop exactly where it's at. So sometimes depending on you, if you're doing different vocal edits, you may want to actually toggle that behavior. And I usually use shift plus spacebar to toggle that preference. Okay, so I just see, can you pitch Steinberg the idea of having mix for inserts, like in FL Studio, super useful, and also potentially MS Choice for insert parts, although this is probably more complicated to develop. So like our Wavelab program, you could take any of the plugins and choose where in the MS side, but maybe if you could tell me what mix for inserts is, that would be helpful. So I'm not exactly sure what that functionality is. I don't use FL Studio, so but I'd be happy to pass it on. Okay, if recording a vocalist in a typical space where the vocalist has no window to control room, etc., is it possible to use VST Connect Pro from the same audio interface? It's probably not the best use of that. I mean, I know a lot of people that just have like a webcam, going, or like an IP cam if it's like really separated, where you could just kind of monitor, because the latency of the video isn't necessarily critical. You just want to be able to kind of communicate. So I know I've known people, like when my son was really young, we just set up kind of like a webcam. So, the grandparents could watch him, so, it was just a camera that was in a room that you could access from anywhere. So VST Connect, if you had the pro version, you could see the video. I don't think there would be any issue seeing the video, but it wouldn't be recording through there. But I think you need the pro version if you're on the same network. If you're on different networks, then you could use the SE version as to get it to work. But to be on the same network, you might need the pro version. But I think any webcam or people just hooking up a phone or an iPad or a tablet, a Kindle Fire or something like that, and using that as a camera just for communications works really well. Okay, so we have a question. How do I scroll left and right the easy way? So if you hold down the shift key and just use the mouse scroll wheel. So let's say if I'm here, you could see kind of the bar line here indicating kind of where you are. So let's say if I zoom in and out, I could just hold down the shift key and use the mouse scroll wheel. So I could go up and down, and I could go left and right just holding the shift key. So that's kind of the easiest way. So can we finally use the mouse to vertical scroll or what? I think the behavior is kind of the same. But you could always just use Shift G and H as well. It's pretty easy to operate. So, so you could do just kind of G and H there, or Shift G and H. So G, H, Shift G, Shift H. So, but it's not with a mouse, but you might be able to configure it. But I don't think that has changed. All right, so Gareth is making dinner for his daughter probably an hour ago as I'm catching up. Okay, is it possible to move all of the installed Cubase's stock sound libraries onto another internal drive other than your main C drive without reinstalling them? If so, what's the best way to do this? So you have a little utility called the Steinberg, I think it's a library manager. So all you have to do is any of your content that you have for Halion, Groove Agent, so any of these, all you have to do is just kind of come right over here, and you could just click on move, and that will allow you to just, take any of the content that comes with Cubase, and you could just move all of that directly over to whatever folder you want. So, kind of experiment with the, Steinberg library, and that's an easy way to kind of move all of your content without having to reinstall. So I see a comment from Jeff. So different versions of stems can be created as one with effects, one without, for instance. I'm still on 10.5 for now. So exactly, that's kind of one of the great things with the job export is, you could choose different, levels of included processing or no processing or no master effects, but sends. So, and that way you could have everything. Okay. All right. Good to see Gareth's daughter on a Hangout. Make sure he makes you a good dinner. So she's our famous daughter that gets to join the Hangouts periodically to pull her dad away. All right. So it says, I think you stole my live jazz tracks. Laughing out loud. This guy is a top San Francisco jazz pianist. My friend played sax, a trumpet, and violinist too. Wow. Here a couple weeks ago in Chico, California. So actually, I get that from the file from my friend Carlos Chafin. So he runs In Your Ear Studios in Richmond, Virginia. So wonderful engineer, great studio. So, but I may not be them, but you know, sometimes jazz can sound alike. All right. Okay, so question, how do I get a fully mixed audio track to match the project tempo? I don't want to stretch or warp. I don't want stretch or warp artifacts. I just want the tracks beats synced with the grid. All right, so let's say we'll, you know, just take a 2-track file in. All right, so let's say I'll just do this. So I want to just take that particular file and let's do a tempo detection on this, and we'll see how it goes. So, you know, once you have, I'll just go back to my other file here quickly. So, you know, take this. So no click. And I, you know, just want to do the tempo detection. So if I wanted this to be like, you know, perfectly dead even or whatever, I could now do the tempo detection. And listen to it. So we look at our tempos like roughly 140, some 144. So I could select a file, go to audio and advanced to set definition from tempo. This is going to embed all of those tempo changes in the file. Now I could take off the tempo map. It's 120. Let's make it 168. So it's a pretty extreme change there, but let's say 144, just or if I wanted to, you know, just take, you know, modify the tempo and just say, okay, I want to take that and slow it down just there and ramp it back up. So let's say I want this to kind of, you know, ramp down. So let's say as we're speeding it up, then I could also take this section and just say, okay, I want this to be the tempo to be more steady, less fluctuation. Or let's just raise. So once you kind of do the tempo detection and do the, you know, go to your advanced under audio and do the set definition from events, or set definition from tempo, then you'll be good. Okay, question. What's the difference between a track archive export or saving a channel preset? So the track archive contains the media, or like the audio file or the MIDI information, whereas a channel preset doesn't contain the media, but just what what the inserts, channel strip, and the EQ, volume, panning, and phase were set to. So that's a difference. So track archive actually contains the media, like the audio file, the MIDI information itself. All right, so we see Ambient Dave is like, really can't wait to start exploring the new features. Media editing looks great. So is a Scale Assistant. I think you'll love it. So have a lot of fun. Okay. Okay, so we see how do you quantize live instruments like drum kits, bass, guitars? Okay, so you could do it kind of a number of different ways. So if you wanted to just take, let me just see what we have going on. Just load this project up. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. If you've learned something new, make sure that you hit the like button. And if you aren't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that as well. All right, so let's say if I wanted to just take, I think we have some guitars in here that we could use. So let's say I just want to take a little bit of guitar for the intro. So I'll just pan this center for now. So let's say if I want to quantize this to eighth notes. So I'm going to open up just my quantize panel. And, a lot of times you want to just enable audio warp for audio stuff. So let's say, okay, let's just do eighth notes. And as I hit quantize, this will just kind of, so I'll just kind of zoom in on this a little more so you can see it. But I'll take this and so you just select your audio warp, and then you could set your amount. So say, okay, here we'll just do eighth notes, and then when I hit quantize, you can see it kind of tightened up a little bit. So you really kind of just do it the same way, but often you want to just make sure that you have the audio warp kind of turned on in a quantize panel. Okay, so just see, Greg, the preference in Spectral Layer 7 Pro, device choice, Spectral Layers Bridge. What's it about? When is this supposed to be used? Also, should this be device choice? Should be Wasapi or better in ASIO? So always kind of use the ASIO choice. I'm not sure what the Spectral Layers Bridge preference is, but I could do some research on it if you want to email me at, so if you want to send it to Send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de. I'll do some research and play around with the preference. Okay, so question. Hi, when I record in loop mode, Cubase doesn't know the tempo of the files recorded, and then when I want to use musical mode, it doesn't work. All right, so let's give it a quick shot here. Okay, so I'm going to set audio track here. And I'll just put this on loop mode, and I'm going to set my tempo here to, let's say 123 beats a minute. Okay, so let's just do a couple cycle recording modes. Okay, so now we look at this. We'll go to our pool window. And we'll look at our audio files. Yeah, so it doesn't look like it goes in there, but you could always, in the pool, if you wanted to, just type it in. So looks like, so I will pass that along. So it looks like you could, but let's see if I go to, I will change my tempo here up and see if I record out of loop mode. Let's come here and I'll just kind of punch in. Okay, and I'll go to the pool window. All right, so it looks like when it's in loop mode, it's not catching that. So I'll pass that along. Sorry, that could be annoying. But you could enter them in the pool window. Okay, just seeing talk of different vintage samplers and 4-voice synths early on. So, all right. So, and to see a comment that I remember so well, I used to carry a rucksack full of discs to the studio on a daily basis. Don't miss those days. I can actually remember, many like big producers and engineers. I remember a couple of times people would come in with their Kai libraries on floppy disk, and it would be handcuffed, and they would be handcuffed to like a briefcase, like an Anvil briefcase, and every like their whole life was these samples lined up with these samples lined up with these samples, and that was their entire livelihood. So I don't miss those days either. I see a great comment from Ted Springman. Steinberg takes first place in DAW firsts. So we see, are there any 5.1 tutorials? There are, but sometimes, it's hard to actually, so when you actually start a project, you want to make sure that you have, like your VST connections, that you have a 5.1 output. Sometimes it's hard to do 5.1 if you can't hear it. But here we could choose to have a 5.1 track going to our 5.1 out. And then as we, go to open up this particular channel, we can, we go to the panner. You could have, your different surround panners available here to work with. So, and you could see it kind of here where all of a sudden, we could choose to pan the device anywhere within your 5.1 field. All right, so I see a great comment from Terry Dean. I decided not to upgrade a while ago, but then I realized I couldn't keep up with the Hangouts and stuff, so I upgraded the moment C11 was released. No problems with the licensing server at all. That's great. So all this free education is kind of tainted now because it's really just to get you to buy the new version. So we're evil capitalist. All right. So I see question, Greg, thanks for your explanations of my very audio question. Can you please tell me where I can make a request to add to scale quantized feature to future very audio updates? Thank you. I will go ahead and pass it on, but there's also kind of a features request. If you go to the Steinberg forum, there's kind of an area that you could put in feature requests there. So okay, so question from Gareth. Why does the pan law affect the volume between stereo in and the track? And so it says summing two identical signals is plus 6 dB, kind of confused by the 3 dB statement. I thought that adding, like doubling the sound would add it by 3 dB, but maybe I'm mistaken. So, and it's also how the panning is being done throughout the mix console. And that's why you may see some discrepancies in the level, which I think is what you had earlier. Okay, so I just see a question. Can you invert automation lane? I'm not, is there a purpose? Maybe if you could let me know what the purpose is of inverting it. So if you want a track to automatically go down, I could take a quick look and see, but I'm not sure if, if there's maybe like kind of a real world application for that, or just if it could do it. But let's say if I come here, I have automation. Let me see. Don't think we could invert it, but I'll try it with the project logical editor. Yeah, I don't know a way of inverting the automation, but if you could let me know like why, if it's you want something just to, for CC data, if it's automation or CC data, let me just see. I'll just see if it's maybe an option in the logical editor. So let's say if I wanted to take, if we have modulation. Okay, so let's say we wanted to take so we could say if I want to do this, we'll say type is equal to controller, and we'll say controller value 1 is equal to CC1 invert. So let's say if we have that as our CC data there, and let's see if I run this. So, but I don't know a way to invert, but if you could let me know if there's like what use case you want, I could maybe pass that along. Okay. Okay, so let's just, all right. So hello all, I'm new to Cubase coming from Finale. What would you recommend me to watch or read to pick up the basics? What are the main features I should focus on for a start? So, really kind of determine, it's if you're doing what projects you're doing can make a big determination. So, if you're a film composer, there's kind of different things that you would do from a hip hop or composer or an EDM or a, someone who's recording, death metal. So they would all, have kind of different starting off points. So it could be a little hard to, figure that out. But if you could, maybe let us know what, what type of projects you want to do, we could probably kind of guide you along a little better. Okay, so I just see a question for WaveLab update with question marks, and 4 of them. So, the WaveLab team is busy working on stuff as well. So I think we may see some new stuff from them, so we'll just have to be patient. And when it's out, we'll let you know. Okay, so we have Matthias here, NI comp, control, and C11. I'm using chord scales and KK, I guess that's the complete control. But after recording in Cubase, I only see single notes in the editor instead of the chord progression. Can I solve this in Cubase? So you could see exactly, it seems like it might be the MIDI control editor, or what the controller is. So, it could be if you have the scale assistant on in Cubase, and so let's say if I had the scale assistant on in Cubase and the scale assistant on, I'm not that familiar with the NI controllers, that they could be fighting against each other. So, but check if you go to the, MIDI inserts, you could actually kind of see what's being transmitted from the controller. So if you, let's say, go to the MIDI track and you'll see MIDI inserts. At this point, you could go to MIDI monitor, and your MIDI monitor, you could now just see exactly like what messages are being transmitted, like when you play particular notes, and see if that makes sense. I would tend to shy away from having it in a controller, and I would do it more kind of in the software if I had my choice, but I'm not familiar with the controller to maybe give you the best judgment on that. Okay, so we had some questions that were sent in. Let me get to those before it gets too late. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. Okay, so we have, yesterday I watched your YouTube video on arpeggiation. When you put up the Arpeggi in 5 inserts, notice that you're able to have 4 insert frames up on your screen at one time. When I tried the same, the insert frame disappeared when I clicked the next instrument lane. I was able to show only one at a time. Same thing happens when I have up, for instance, a Hallian frame with my first screen, and then I activate. So I think probably what this is if we come over here, you could say Arpeggi SX. So say an Arpeggi SX. You may just have to right click or control click and say always on top. So with a lot of these windows, you can now just right click and say always on top. And as I click elsewhere, those windows will stay. So I think that's what the question is kind of getting at. So, give that a try and see if that makes sense. So say if I go to my Apache SX and I click elsewhere or click on instrument. So even on the instrument itself, I'll come here. We could right click and make sure that always on top is turned on. Okay, when I cycle record, I hear the previous cycle recordings. How can I mute them? So let's go to you, and I'm not sure if this is for MIDI or. So at this point, you'll see in the bottom left-hand corner of your project window on the transport, you'll see different record modes. Make sure that you probably want stacked activated here. It could be I'm not in cycle record, but make sure that mix stacked, it could be set to mix, but you probably want it set to stacked. So try toggling and changing that setting. Okay, when I transpose, the pitch changes, but chords in the editor stay the same. How can I get them to change or move as well? So let's say I'm here. Okay. All right, so let me just. Just do a new project here really quick. Sorry, my mouse is acting a little strange. Okay, I'm just gonna try turning my keyboard on and off and maybe acting up a little bit. Okay. Sorry, my mouse is acting really strange. Let me see if I could. Okay, so if I have MIDI data in a particular part, I'll just come here to my key editor. Just gonna check one preference here really quickly. Okay. Sorry, my mouse is kind of misbehaving. I'm gonna try to turn my keyboard off just for a second. See if like a key is stuck on. All right, I'm gonna see if I can. Okay. I think my foot may have been resting on another keyboard. All right, so sorry about that. Okay, so so when I transpose, the pitch changes, but the chords in the editor stay the same. So if I'm I'm not sure what chords that you have. So let's say if we transpose these notes. Sorry, my mouse is not behaving well. Don't know if my battery is dying. I'm try switch. Okay, so I'm gonna just change these particular notes. Okay, so I'm not sure if this is with the global tracks that are visible in the editor. So let's say if I just so I'm here. Sorry, my mouse is being so odd. Okay, so let's say if I transpose these notes, so go to MIDI and let's do our transpose setup. So let's say we'll have these go down 4. Okay, so if it's, when we look at that, you know, the chord tracks are going to be kind of separate, but we could choose to transpose the chord tracks as well. But I think it's gonna, so I'm not sure if the chords are here or if it's going to be from the status, like if these chords are what is changing. So but you know, this, you know, when you transpose to MIDI notes, it's not necessarily going to transpose like the chord track. Okay, so we'll move on. Sorry, my mouse and keyboard are getting a little weird. Maybe the batteries are getting low. All right, I just installed Steinberg Download Assistant. I want to ask which out of all the Cubase shall I begin with? I used Steinberg 24 in 1991 and know a bit about it. Did an engineering course many, many years ago. I'm a musician, have lots of my music in the usual music file formats, MP3 and WAV, because I obviously before this out, I was giving my music when I leave a professional studio. I want to now set up my own home studio and have, as I said, Steinberg Assistant. There's so much choice and it's confusing. Also, on how much space they take up on my laptop, Cubase 10 Pro, Cubase 11 Pro, how much space, megabytes, gigabytes, safely without crashes happening. Do I actually also need to get a second laptop or just a monitor with an additional hard drive? What hard drive do you recommend? So really, I need to discuss all this with my local computer technician so he can recommend an inexpensive option. I have the e-licenser control icon on my laptop now. Does that mean I have to pay for the license? So, you know, you'll need to, you know, you could download all the software, but you still, you know, would need to activate the license and have that on a USB e-licenser key. So you could download everything. And as you go to the download assistant for version 11, you could actually see exactly how big each file is. So if you install all the content packs, it's going to be 25 gigs or so, with all the different sounds and content packs. And you can pick and choose now what exact options that you want to download when you work with that. So, if you wanted to have all the sounds and it's worth having, all the different instruments, definitely recommend doing that. So you don't need a second computer. You can do it all on one monitor. That's what I've been doing the whole Hangout. So, think about, getting as much RAM, as fast a computer as you can for your budget, and, get a screen that does at least like 1080p, and 30 gigabytes and for a new computer is kind of very small in kind of size wise. So and because you want to have enough storage space for audio files that you record as well. Okay, so another question from Argentina. I would like to know if the option to export folder tracks will be available in the track selection of the export audio mixdown menu. So currently when we do the export audio mixdown menu, it's going to, be based on the tracks. And we could think of folder tracks as being more, for working with, so if we have this, think of folder tracks as being more kind of organized for on your project window. So if I wanted to move all these tracks to a folder that we could collapse, there is a macro to take all, to add select the tracks, put it into a folder track and create a group. So, the folder tracks don't have any audio characteristics. So, but a lot of people will match a group to each folder, and that's probably the best way to do it. And you could export using the group, using the groups, and treat those as separate entities. So another question, any news about multi-touch support? So there weren't any new additions with Cubase 11 for that. Still not all operating systems. So, actually have support for multi-touch. So that gets to be, problematic as well. Okay. Greg, is there an SDK or some other app that will is there an SDK or some other app that will allow me to adjust or add controls for the DM2000? I use one as my control surface and would like to customize it a bit. So the only controls that you're going to have for the DM2000 per kind of its specification is you'll come here and say, okay, we want DM2000, you'll have the function keys. And here, these function keys you can set up to do, probably 3,000 different functions inside Innuendo. So you're going to have, it looks like, the function keys 4 through 16. So you'll have 12 function keys. But that's really, it's not necessarily a limitation of Cubase or Innuendo, but it's going to be really more kind of limitation of what the control surface capabilities on the DM2000 are. And, obviously it's a wonderful console, but, it was, it's called the DM2000 because it came out in the year 2000 as well. Okay. So let me jump back to our discussion. So let's, okay, so good to see Lawrence from Rhode Island. I think it might have been his question. We just answered on the DM2000. All right. So I see from Ambient Dave at Cubase, we have our lockdown to the 2nd of December, but a lot of people are defying and close down to order shop-wise. We hope everyone stays safe and healthy. I'm priding myself on being boring and staying inside. So speaking of the transport bar, is it possible to have the bottom toolbar be permanently visible even in the mixer? So, when we have kind of the transport bar, activated here, we can see this. But if you go, like, let's say we go full screen with the mixer, the transport bar can go away, which is what a lot of people wanted, to have more screen real estate for the mixer. So there, but what you can do is actually have, transport controls here. Some people will set up workspaces so that the mixer, when you kind of maximize it, we could kind of, have it lay like that. So when you, hit a workspace, the mixer will still have the transport controls visible. But if you come over here to the settings, you could choose to have transport buttons in the mixer, in the top mixer zone as well. All right, so I just see, I think it's from J ADAT and MTC. So, if you were synchronizing to, an ADAT, so the ADAT, you could actually have its own ADAT sync, but if you have MIDI time code printed onto an ADAT track, you could do that. But if you go to the project synchronization setup, you could choose to have, like your, I don't have it set up, but you could have your, ADAT sync as part of your, audio device. So if you have, ADAT sync there, we could do that. Or going into, I think even in the studio setup, you could choose to have, whether it's externally clocked and where it's externally clocked, depending on your interface. But yeah, you could definitely do ADAT sync with the appropriate interface. A lot of the older RMEs have the ADAT sync. So I see other people liking their Logitech mouse, and other people, you see Apple mouse is from Terry Dean, drives me up the wall. Use a Logitech MX Master. It's great. And other people kind of liking the Logitech. We see how we're doing on time. We have a couple minutes left. Thank you for all wonderful questions. If you've learned something new, make sure that you actually hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Okay, Greg, sometimes I need to quantize a track, but sometimes it doesn't give me the expanded quantize dialog with the track prioritize and splice. How do you force Cubase into that audio quantized mode? So you might have to have group editing enabled. So let's say I'll jump back over to this project here. Okay, and if I wanted to, I have all of my drums, and I have these into a folder. So let's say I've done some quick hit points. So I find kind of the hit points for my kick and snare. So let's say we'll just kind of zoom in and out here. So let's do for like hi-hat. So as we're kind of playing along here, we could say, okay, let's just find the hit points for this and set it for our threshold. Let's do the same for our snare in this case. So we'll just kind of adjust the threshold. So now I'm going to put all of the drum tracks into a folder and apply kind of the group editing. So now when I go to open up my quantize, here we can see the priorities. So you can say, my highest priority is going to be kick. Second highest priority will be, let's say, snare. And maybe hi-hat. So once we have these in group editing, at this point, we could say, okay, we're going to kind of create the priorities that will slice. I will come over here. Let's say I want this to be set for 16th notes. And I will at this point quantize. And as we've moved all the events, it's going to put all sorts of nasty little pops and slices and gaps. So, and then you'll be just kind of done just like that. So if we take the audio warp out, you could then, crossfade, when needed. So make sure that you have the group editing on the tracks. Okay, so to see, is it possible to cut and paste from sampler track in lower zone? So let me just... find, I have a sampler track project, I think, but let me just... Okay. All right, so let's say if we're here, we could drag and drop that out, but I'm not sure if we could actually just select, I guess you could come over here and do, so there's, most of the time you're going to be kind of dragging in. You could just do a render in place with the sampler track and have it out, but it's not kind of a copy and paste. Okay, we'll see if we got one more question. We'll wrap up. Okay, so hi Greg, loading HSO, Cubase Artist 11, an instrument, but not within Hallian Sonic. There's no instruments to select. Okay, with Hallian Sonic. So a number of years ago, the standalone Hallian Symphonic Orchestra, the HSO instrument itself was discontinued. So, and it kind of all the sounds migrated to work within the Hallian Sonic SE or Hallian Sonic or Hallian. So it's going to be better just to use it directly from Hallian Sonic. And that's really kind of the intention, just to kind of simplify and make kind of the user experience kind of the same. Okay, with that, we're about to run out of time for our free closed captioning. I want to thank everyone for attending the Hangout. I hope everyone has learned something. If you have actually learned something new, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure that we also, hit the like button. That allows us to keep doing these things. There's going to be a live stream Tuesday on Nuendo, so make sure you check that out. We'll try to do our live stream on Tuesday, but it probably won't happen Friday because in the United States that'll be kind of the day after Thanksgiving. It'll be a big holiday. So with that, I'll go ahead and wrap up, and we will see you next week. Take care.